The younger generation that is being recruited these days aren't successful out of the gate. And I say that because I'm a part of the generation. I'm not successful out of the gate, right? I have to have the framework for it. I have to set up for it. The success of a candidate is majority probably relying on the company, right? The company needs to provide the framework. They need to provide the resources for that hungry. That is a quality that you should be looking for when hiring one of these candidates. Because now we're flipping the script, right? I talked about what a young candidate is looking for. Now we're talking about what a company is looking for, and that's a successful employee. For them to have success, they need to be set up for it. They need to have the framework. They need to have the resources, because they're just geared for success these days. That's really the only thing that the younger generation is geared for.
Welcome, everybody. You are watching the next episode of the Construction MF'ers. My name is 𝗜𝗏𝗃𝗃. I am the CEO and founder of Mobilization Funding. Today, I have a great guest. I'm looking forward to talking to Caleb Fouss. He is going to give us an interesting perspective. He's been an entrepreneur. He's had successful exits. He's started businesses from his dorm room. He has a new business he just started in January to help other entrepreneurs in the construction field. I've found his content incredibly valuable on LinkedIn. I'm glad he's on LinkedIn. I'm glad he's back on LinkedIn, and I'm looking forward to having him share some of his stories and insights with you guys today. So welcome to the show, Caleb. How are you doing?
Scott, I'm very blessed and very honored that you have me here, and I'm pumped. I'm pumped for this conversation.
Me too, man. I mean, I'm going to jump right into it. So you started the School of Blue Collar here in January. Last year, I followed your content like every day. I thought it was the coolest thing you were putting out. And then I guess my assumption, I'm hoping you clear this up, I guess you vanished for a little bit or a little quieter until you could go start this School of Blue Collar. So what is the School of Blue Collar? I know you're super passionate about it, and help everybody understand what you're into and what you're doing.
Sure. Well, you're spot on. I completely vanished from LinkedIn. I went from posting twice a day for, more than a year straight to literally not posting anything and not even opening the app on my phone. So yeah, I did completely vanish. And you're spot on about what I was doing as well. It was just a time that I was focused in. I was grinding on starting the next thing, right? And the next thing for me is I truly feel like God's called me to serve and to serve people. And for the longest time, I ignored that and didn't know what that really entailed. And then it just hit me. Why not serve people in the way that, I can serve them? I know things that a lot of my peers and people in the industry that are my age don't know. And so if I can leverage that to help to serve people and help them grow, that's what I'm going to do. And that's what I've been working on for the last 12 months, is creating the School of Blue Collar and creating the framework around it, really wanting it to be the largest community of young blue collar entrepreneurs and business owners, and providing coaching and, group consulting and everything that someone would really need to scale and to scale effectively.
Nice. So I'm asking for a friend, what's the cutoff between young and old?
I get this question all the time. And that's exactly why I stopped using the word young in my bio. Now it's blue collar entrepreneurs and business owners under 30, because to me, I carry this Gary V type of young premise, right? Gary V, if you know him, he says, if you're under 50, you're young. If you're not over the hill yet, you're young. And that's the premise I carried for a very long time, until it really wasn't until January when I shifted my framework and I was like, yes, I can help those people between 30 and 45 and whatnot, but I don't think I can help them most effectively. There's those special case scenarios that are an exception. But for the most part, the people I feel like I can serve and serve the most effectively are those under 30.
Well, it's the reason I asked you too is because I think when you hear the term young, sometimes young is like age, right? Other times it's young in the game, young in experience, young to this, you know what I mean? So I think you probably would find that you'll be able to help a lot of people that are young to the game as well, or just trying to find their way into a new industry, a new venture, a new opportunity. And despite age, I think you can find a lot of wisdom from all kinds of people that have been through something you've been through. I think too often people are listening to folks that might be old enough, older, but they don't have any experience in the game, or they don't have experience in exactly what someone's looking for. And they think that just because they're older or more successful, that knowledge is going to translate to exactly what they're trying to do too.
No, you're spot on. And a lot of people in the space, especially even if I help only people that are 20, 25, 30, a lot of those people have been in the space twice as long as I have. And I got in the space at 18, 19 years old. These
Yeah.
guys have been doing it since 14, 15, 16. They come from generational families that were contractors, business owners. And so they've been in the space, a lot of them longer than I have. And so it's a weird dynamic for sure. And that's why I said there's always going to be the exceptions where, I go above my normal age range or my normal demographic.
So Caleb, is the school that you're creating here, is it a consulting company? Is it a way to engage with you? What types of scopes of work?
Mhm.
How does someone say, hey, you know what? I think this is for me. I like Caleb, but here's what I do. What are the services offered?
First and foremost, I like to call it a community because it started as such. It started as a LinkedIn newsletter. And next thing I knew, I had 600 people on my email list. And I'm like, holy moly. And so it quickly grew into a Facebook group of, blue collar entrepreneurs and business owners. And then it grew into now a paid community as well, right? And so I don't say paid community like I'm going to put everything behind a paywall. I still put the bulk amount of my time into our free group, our free community. Every single week on our free Facebook group, we do a Zoom call where we bring in a special guest who has been in the space, is a veteran in the space, and just wants to drop a bunch of value on a bunch of young guys and gals. That's scope number one, is our literal community. Free place, you can come and learn. No obligations. Second scope is our private community. There we hold 2 additional Zoom calls every single week. One has a special guest speaker that comes, and we focus really on business development. The second is a group coaching call. We call it coffee hour. It's every single Saturday morning. And then the third thing is, if you want someone to come walk alongside you and help you implement what you're learning inside the communities, that's where I come in. And I come in and one-on-one coach you and guide you through what you're learning, right? Because you can do it all on your own.
Yeah.
It's just, do you want somebody to help you implement that?
What I've always found with coaching too, that I think a lot of people it's the key to being successful with coaching, in my opinion, is what I'm about to tell you. And it's gain the coaching. You can attend all the coaching calls, you can gain all the information, but it's on you to learn how to take what you're learning and apply it to your business. Because the direct coaching is not like someone sitting in your office telling you how to make the decisions and what to do. It's you have to take the content, the base premise of what's going on, and figure out how to implement it for you in your business. And that is a hard thing to do for some folks. I think it's hard for everyone, but I think it's hard to learn how to do it ultimately where you can be effective.
No, you're spot on. One of my coaches and my mentors, and I think I'd be a bad coach and a super bad mentor if I didn't have my own line of coaches, right? I meet with one guy every single Monday, and his thing is, I will not hold your hand. And sometimes it pisses me off. And I'm like, you're asking me these questions, you're walking me through XYZ. Like, what exactly am I supposed to do here? And he's like, I've given you the principles, I've given you the guidelines. Figure it out. I'm not holding your hand. And it was one of the hardest things for me to really comprehend, is like, having a coach helps you implement, helps and guides you, right? It takes it off of you having to do it all by yourself, but it's not a do it for you service. It's a do it with you. And
Right.
so that was the hardest thing, and the thing I had to, oh, now I get it.
If you were to have a community, or maybe the people you spend time with, what does perfect type of person look like to come and join your community that would gain a lot of value, add a lot of value? Just like when you envision, hey, I hope I have this community full of these folks. Like, what does that
Yeah.
perfect look like?
Perfect person that I look for is someone that's hungry, ambitious, and willing to do what it takes. Very, very cliche, very generic answer. And I say that because I truly believe it. There is plenty of people that will jump at any chance they get to take free resources and free value, but they won't do anything with it. At that point, that's not the type of person I want to be in my community. Because to me, I feel like it goes back to the classroom when you were a kid. The teacher's helping one person that isn't really getting involved in the class. They're getting terrible grades, terrible test scores, but the teacher's spending all their one-on-one time with them. It's like if you spent your one-on-one time with Billy over here, who's attentive in class, he's reading, he's doing great on his tests, he could really thrive, right? And so that's the people I look for. I look for the people that want to be attentive, want to learn, and want to really take the next step, and they're really willing to do anything, right? So if you are hungry and you have the willpower to, go above and beyond, think outside the box, I guess in other ways to put it, the ideal person I'm looking for is out of the box, right? It's not the normal person.
Yeah, what I
That's
love
who
that
I'm
you
looking for.
did, what I love that you did and said there is you describe personality traits that anyone can have. You didn't describe experience, revenue,
Hmm.
profit, time in business, scopes of work. You
Yep.
just described human character traits that, quite frankly, anybody can choose to have and earn with the right activities and exercise. And that's cool. And so I
Hmm.
have to segue into this. It wasn't something I was going to ask about necessarily right now, but I have to piggyback this. So what you're doing and what you just described, I personally feel the construction industry has so much to offer someone in that capacity. And it also has someone to offer at any point in the journey in that capacity. They don't have to be an entrepreneur. You
Hmm.
can take that route. And I speak and talk a lot about how I believe awesome the construction industry is, because you can enter it at the most minimum level or the most maximum level. You can range anywhere in between. And no matter where you start, you can climb that ladder, because it is one of the few industries that you can be an operational executive, you can be in human resources, you can be in the field, in mid-level management, entry-level management, executive management. If you're a finance person and you want to get into a complex business and figure out how to make an amazing impact, you can be a public company CFO. You can be a large private company CFO, all in construction. There's not many industries you can say that for. And so as we all know, there's a real deficit to the workforce in construction, and trying to attract and bring new talent into this industry to
Hmm.
supplant the people that are going to be retiring. There's just so many stigmas that are out there to prevent people from coming into the industry. And most of those people that we're trying to attract are going to be under 30 years old, right? They might even be
Hmm.
under 25.
Right.
And so I love what you're doing. And has that workforce challenge impacted you to create this? Or was it something else that kind of gave you this is where I'm going to go and why?
Short story, no. Mostly because this is a big thing in the construction industry on LinkedIn is workforce shortage. Half people are going to be retired, this, and this. I don't have the normal take on the workforce issues in construction, because I think it's two separate issues. And not to segregate the employees and workers in construction, but there is, right? There's the field workers and there's the office workers. There's a little bit of blending that, two circles would have there, but in reality, that's two separate workforces, right? You're looking for a white collar type of employee for the blue collar space, and you're looking for a hardened blue collar employee for the field space. So I could go on this tangent for a long time. I just have a very different take, not super different take, but I have a more straightened approach when it comes to talking about the workforce issues and the workforce shortages. But it's definitely not something that had any pull on me creating the School of Blue Collar. Mostly because, my audience is business owners and entrepreneurs, right? So my audience really isn't the guy looking for a promotion to superintendent, or the guy looking to move from superintendent to project manager.
Well, let's dive into this then. What are you telling those entrepreneurs who do have a blue collar shortage and need to get people attracted to their business? What are you telling them to do? How are you telling them to act? What things are they implementing to be successful? And I agree with you. There's people that have no problems with workforce shortages, companies, and there's some that
Mhm.
have a lot.
Yeah.
I have my own opinions on that, but I really like to hear what you're having people do to combat that.
I believe it's a direct reflection of your company. You are in charge of your workforce. You are responsible for your workforce shortage, your workforce, fulfillment. I believe that hiring has been done wrong for a long time because it goes back to what we said earlier. When you asked me what I look for, I didn't mention one time any kind of skill, experience, financial, it doesn't matter. All I mentioned was anything that could be reflected on your attitude and personality. The most successful people are people that have a good attitude, people that have a good mindset. And I think that's what we need more of in construction. There's so many people that see how much people make financially in construction and they want to get into it, but then they have to start at the bottom, which is fine to an extent. But if you have somebody that is already 5-10 years into their career and want to make a switch over into the blue collar space, whether it be field or office, why limit them or write them off just because they don't have the same experience as your other candidates?
Right.
And not to jump ahead, but I'd love to talk about the kind of question you asked me, what am I telling people that are trying to hire? And it goes into my stance on recruitment. And I love any questions on recruitment. I truly believe recruitment is crazy simple because when we look at recruiting the younger generation, below 30, Gen Zers, millennials, even the next generation under Gen Zers, they just want to be a part of a fun work culture, right? Fun work environment, whether they're part of the field crew or they're part of the office group. They want to be a part of a fun work environment. The boomers are going to hate that because, work isn't supposed to be fun, but that's just not true anymore. This means Fridays, catered in lunches. This means monthly company outings, quarterly company parties. It needs to be fun. I always say, picture the Google office headquarters, but make it construction. And you will have the most popular company that every postgraduate, every project manager, every superintendent will want to be a part of. Do you know the percentage of an office culture or morale that improves when you add an unlimited snack or coffee bar?
No.
It's 100%. 100%. The overall morale is guaranteed to improve 100%. I know this because I've tested this. I just put for our field crews, they show up at the shop every single morning, right? Put an unlimited coffee bar out, right? An espresso machine, Keurig, everything they need, some syrups, come in, make coffee in the morning, do whatever you want. 100% morale improvement. And it costed me what, $200 to get a couple coffee machines. All my guys are young guys. And it just proves my point that they want to have somewhere where they can have a good morale. It doesn't matter if your office has, fun policies or a positive work environment. It doesn't matter. If it's a fun work environment, employees are going to be more involved, they're going to be more productive, and they're going to be overall more happy. The second thing that the younger generation looks for when we're talking recruiting is loyalty. And whether or not, they deserve it, younger generation looks for loyalty. There's a lot of things under loyalty, right? Pay, benefits, but loyalty is the big overarching thing when we're not looking at a work environment.
You touched on a few things there, and
yeah,
you mentioned fun. The one thing I didn't hear you say, though, is where do you think winning and having success and being successful fits into that equation? And if you think it is something, when does it have to occur in the process?
If we're talking about these recruits, these candidates having a strive for success, they need to be built and set up to be successful, right? The younger generation that is being recruited these days aren't successful out of the gate. And I say that because I'm a part of the generation. I'm not successful out of the gate, right? I have to have a framework for it. I have to set up for it. The success of a candidate is majority probably relying on the company, right? The company needs to provide the framework. They need to provide the resources for that that is a quality that you should be looking for when hiring one of these candidates. Because now we're flipping the script, right? I talked about what a young candidate is looking for. Now we're talking about what a company is looking for, and that's a successful employee. For them to have success, they need to be set up for it. They need to have the framework. They need to have the resources because they're just geared for success these days. That's really the only thing that the younger generation is geared for. You couldn't point me to a dozen people under 30 that are just sitting at their desk being like, it's 5 now, I'll clock out. Not in the blue collar space, right? We're more geared towards growing and hitting the next level because it gives us a sense of fulfillment, affirmation. So I think as long as the company provides it, the employee is going to perform, assuming you hired the right employee.
So as a business owner then, and you're working, if that's the employees are, what's your advice to the entrepreneur business owner in terms of what they need to be doing for their company, for their growth, for their vision, how they lay that out to their employees and what frequency? What's your philosophy on that?
Scott, I did not know I was going to be airing out my dirty laundry on recruiting when we agreed to talk today.
I didn't either, but this is an interesting conversation. So it's not, it wasn't on my list.
There's a saying that goes, obviously everybody's heard it, quick to hire, fast to fire. And it's great, but there needs to be something in between it. And I can't take credit for this philosophy. A guy named Josh, I blanking on his last name, but there needs to be something in between quick to hire and fast to fire. And it's to lean in, right? You quick to hire because you want to get that workforce. You want to build up your team. You want to be fast to fire, but you want to lean into them first, right? There's a problem. They don't seem to be fitting into your culture just as much. At first glance, you'd say this isn't going to work out. He's got to go. But if you really lean into it and go, okay, this person operates a little bit different than other people. Let's lean into it and see if it could actually be a huge benefit for us. I actually did that this year and I hired somebody and immediately I'm like, oh boy, you know what? I'll give it till the 90 days. We'll see what happens. And I had a meeting and he's like, just lean into them a little bit, lean into them a little bit. And I did. I leaned in and I'm like, they operate completely polar opposite that I would ever. I don't understand their thought process. I don't understand how they go from A, B to C. But when I gave them a little bit of freedom and independence to do what they do and do it how they see fit, they flourished. And, the 90 days came and I was like, there's no thought in my mind right now that'd be a smart idea to let this person go. They've done so much for us. And it's all because when you're quick to hire, you're only looking at a certain framework of an employee. You're looking for them to have A, B, C qualities. And if they don't have that, they're not going to fit. But you're not, there's an entire alphabet of qualities that you're not looking into. When you see someone that's not going to fit, I would lean into it and see if they really would, especially for entrepreneurs, growing small teams, right? These guys are growing 1 to 5 to, maybe on the bigger side, 10 employees. It's going to be really hard to find 3 to 5 in a row employees that operate the exact same. And realistically, you don't want that, but you do want to be quick to hire, figure out if that employee is going to share the same drive and the same, loyalty that you do to the company. And then if they do, figure out how they operate can fit your structure. Don't make it a hard line. I hate hard lines. Boundaries are great, but lines are not. Let them flourish and let them operate how they think is going to be most beneficial to you. And if it still doesn't work out, great. Let them go on their way and keep repeating the process. But if they do work out, that's awesome. You were quick to hire that employee. They're working out and you're on your way to building a great team.
What do you think are some of the misconceptions about the construction industry that the younger workforce may have that just aren't true, that you tend to be maybe clarifying for them, or you're hearing this thing, you're like, man, where did that come from? Or are there any?
I think there's a lot of misconceptions about construction work. I remember plenty of times riding in the car on the way from baseball practice. And, one of my parents or one of my friends' parents, when we'd carpool, looking out the window and being like, see, this is why you guys need to get good grades. This is why you need to go to college, because you're going to end up like him with that high vis vest on. And I don't make that up. Like, that truly happened. I think that happened for a lot of people. And it's easy to say that when you don't understand the field, you don't understand the culture, you don't understand the industry at all. I think the biggest misconception that I experienced was that it's a backup plan career. It's if college doesn't work out, it's if your white collar job doesn't work out. You could go on and on, but I think that is the primary misconception that I hear a lot from the younger generation.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that's the biggest misconception, that I think that and income. I think people think, because of what you said, they think that there's an income that's attached to it too. That's quite frankly not a lot of money. If you asked a lot of young folks, what would they care more about, dollars or a job prior to ever going to college? When I say young, I mean talking teenagers, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think it might be surprising how often they've said, "Oh, hey, would you want this job that pays $100,000? You want this job that pays $55,000?" And then they'd say 100, right? And you say, "Okay, well, you either have a choice. You can go to 4 years of school, or you can go to a year's worth of school, technical school. Which one do you think?" And they're going to draw those lines. The
Yeah.
100's going to go to the 4 years, and the 50's going to go to the technical school. And they're wrong. And the reality is, you can go spend hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars for a $55,000 a year, job, and it has nothing to do with college or education as it relates to construction. So I think, like, that premise, it doesn't mean that's the wrong choice. It just means if you made that choice with the wrong thought in your head, that's a rude awakening somewhere in the middle of your college or after, right? And so it's those kind of conversations I think that parents need to start having. I think the construction industry needs to start having, and people need to start talking about those items, because money is important to people. But so is what the realities of their job is going to be too. I know plenty of white collar jobs that people have this impression of what it's going to be like. And you get in there and you're like, well, that stinks. Well, is it the job or is it the company? Because it might be an awesome job for you, just might be a terrible job at that company.
No, I completely agree. It goes back to the thing where I said there's two separate jobs in blue collar. There's the office jobs and there's the field jobs. And there's not to say one's better than the other, but when we're comparing office environments, that's the office side of things. And it's been proven, it's been shown that blue collar companies have better work cultures, have better office cultures. I think that's because it's mixed in with the field crews, right? It's mixed in with guys and gals that don't have any corporate structures, right? They don't have any, they're working with their hands all day. The last thing they want to do is sit in a meeting with the president of the company talking about how they didn't hit their revenue goals this quarter, right? They don't care. That's not their field house. And so I think it's all about the company culture. I mean, you could go work for Google and be really unhappy, or you could go work for John's construction company that has 50 employees and is a blast to work for, I think it all comes down to the company.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think inside that company, there's not one way. There's not, like, when someone says, okay, great, what makes a great culture? You could have dozens of definitions, but I think the one thing that is really critical to identify, in my opinion, for any entrepreneur, if you're going to be successful with a great culture, it has to be genuine, which means the culture in my company as an entrepreneur might be different than the great culture in my company as an entrepreneur might be different than the same great culture in Caleb's company as an entrepreneur. But if you and I tried to pick one in the middle, that might be, someone else's great culture, and both of us tried to mirror that, but it was incongruent, or even one or two things were incongruent to what we believe, we wouldn't have a great culture. Same core values, could be same things. And so I think it's really important for people to lean in. You used that term earlier. Lean in on what you believe as an entrepreneur and just own it, because you'll attract the people that will give their best for you in that culture. But if you try to mirror something that's not genuine, you actually have no shot.
That's why most mergers fail as well, right? That's why most companies that merge, the companies fail.
Yeah.
And it all comes down to the company culture. Company cultures aren't supposed to mix, right? Everyone's got their own company culture. And so I wanted to hit on a question that you asked, and I didn't get to answer, the best advice I'd ever received on a job site. And it was actually from my boss before I joined my excavation company with my mother-in-law. I was telling him about, how, my mother-in-law really wants me to come work with her, and I don't want to work with her because I'll just be the son-in-law, right? I'll just be the son who got given a job, and I'll never be seen as more than that. And he said, it doesn't matter if you're an office employee or a field employee. If you're the hardest worker in the room, you're going to earn the respect of everybody. I remember him saying that. I remember right where we were. I remember exactly the day. And I've carried that with me for the last 3 years. And it's super powerful. It doesn't matter who you are. It does not matter if your dad's the president of a 100 employee company. If you're the hardest worker in the room, you're going to earn the respect.
No, I couldn't agree more. I think that's excellent advice. And the fact that you heard it and heated it is just as impressive, because I'm sure lots of people have heard that somewhere in their life, but didn't take it to heart and didn't implement it. And so, kudos to you. So on the tone of questions, I like to go through a little rapid fire round of questions, and one of which we just hit, which is,
Yeah.
what is the best advice you ever heard on a construction job? But the next one is, and I want you to just think about these off the top of your head. You don't have to have a structured answer, but we also asked, what's the biggest misconception people have about construction work? And you nailed on that one already. But here's one for you. You get to pick one: a skyscraper, a bridge, or a tunnel.
Oh,
You
a
had to
tunnel.
work on one. A tunnel?
There's you don't have to go anywhere in that. I will go underground 1,000,000 times before I go anywhere above 100 feet, unless I'm in an airplane. Not a heights person.
That's funny. You know what's funny? When we originally thought of that question and started asking it, it's the last thing I thought people would say was tunnel, but it's the most answered question is tunnel. That's funny.
Absolutely.
What's the most underrated skill you think in the industry?
That is tough, because you go a lot of different ways for that question.
Mhm.
I'll go two ways. One, I'll go leadership. Most underrated skill in the industry is leadership and leading effectively.
Yeah.
The
Hands down.
hardest skill trade, or I shouldn't say hardest, the most underrated skill trade, and I don't know if you've got this one before, but I think it's electrical. There's a lot of underrated skills, but that's just the one I'm most familiar with. I think it takes a lot to become a master electrician. And if you walk through an empty, just newly framed building, and then you walk in a week later and see all the wires running, and it's like, holy crap.
Yeah.
That's just, when I worked for a general contractor, that's always something that blew me away, is the electrical work.
Yeah. Electrical can make a job, or they can crush a job,
Mhm.
and anything that has that kind of like intensity to it, or bandwidth of good to bad, it's got to be a high skilled position that can be you can either value it tremendously, or it can be tremendously undervalued. If someone can make electrical look easy, then you've never had bad electrical done on your job before, so
Absolutely.
once you have bad electrical, you can see how bad the whole thing can go. And you're right, it's right there, and it's in the guts of the building. So if you're awarded your dream job, what would it be?
That's tough. I feel like I already have my dream job. And I say that because I don't think I have a dream job that I want to achieve, and I haven't always thought this way transparently, but I think it's in my best interest to just be present, right? And I think in the present, I'm super happy with where I am. I'm super happy with what I do and who I get to help. If I were to change anything, it would be that I get to bring my family, my wife, and my new baby with wherever and whenever I travel. I travel quite a bit, and it always sucks sitting in a hotel room alone. Just sucks.
No, there's no doubt about it. That's cool, man. Well, I have one other question for you that I have not prepared you for. And that question
Go for it.
is there anything that I should have asked you that I did not?
You asked, we talked about this a little bit before we started recording the podcast. You had mentioned, that I'm in a season of giving back. And, you had talked about a lot of people wish they could give back and be in a season of giving back. It's a common misconception that I think a lot of people have, is you can give back wherever and wherever you're at. Really quickly, I'll say, I think that if someone, specifically a business owner, were to tell me that they don't believe they're at a stage or a phase in their life when they could give back, I would tell you that imposter syndrome is strongly taking over their mentality, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. And I'll tell you why. I believe that if you don't have the feeling of imposter syndrome, then you probably aren't doing enough, and you probably aren't doing great in life or business.
Mhm.
I feel like, my advice is that if you want to give back, just start doing it. Do you know something that your peers don't? Do you know something that your audience don't? Great. That's the first thing you start to give back. It doesn't have to be that complicated. It really doesn't.
Well, I think the simple fact is too, and I agree with you. I think the simple fact about giving, saving, whatever it may be that we're all supposed to do, a lot of times you have this misconception that you have to get to a certain stage or certain point. And what I've learned through the years is if you're not a saver when you're broke, you're not going to be a saver when you're rich. If you're not a giver now and you're not giving back, you're not going to be a giver and give back later on either. And the real truth is, and I know you believe in God, and so do I. Here's the sad truth. If you don't figure out how to give now, you're not going to get to that stage where you think you're going to give, because you have to have the learned skills and discipline and trust from whatever you believe in. I happen to believe in God.
Yep.
He's not going to give you those things if you can't trust that you're going to do them right. Or he's not going to give you those things if he can't trust that you're equipped and ready to handle that. I think a lot of people hear that phrase of, God only gives us what we can handle.
Amen.
And he's right. A lot of people think of it in a negative way, but it's actually, I believe it's much more in a positive way from its original intent. You're not going to get all the things that you desire until you're ready. And so if you're not ready for them, you have to go through often pain to learn lessons. He teaches us in different ways. It come from people, pain, and progress, but in perseverance. And so you can learn it from certain people, which I always highly suggest. You learned a great lesson from your mentor on that job site.
Yeah.
A lot easier learning it that way than having to suffer through some miserable scenario where you would have learned it. But there's going to be lessons you pick up along the way. And so I think you're right, man. If you're going to give back and you want to be someone that gives, you need to start giving and do it responsibly. It can be your time. It can be your treasures. It can be just follow your heart. Do things that are in your heart. But you nailed it, man.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah. Well, you got a lot of wisdom for what I would call a young man also, Caleb. And so I wish I had the same insights that early on. I can tell you I didn't. I was in the process of crashing and burning. I always had to learn the hard way. Kill myself, rebuild, kill myself, rebuild. And I don't mean kill myself. I just mean put myself through some pain.
Yeah.
But they're good lessons. So I think how can people find you? Because I want to support you. I want people to know if you are young in the game and you want to figure out some ways to skip some years and get ahead, I think Caleb's a great way to do that. So how do people find you?
Absolutely. They can find me literally on any social media platform at real Caleb Fouss, or my business at School of Blue Collar. Any social media platform, you can find me.
Awesome. Well, Caleb, I appreciate you taking the time to jump on our podcast, sharing your wisdom. Please let me know if there's anything I can do to help you in any way. I'm happy to help share any insights, information, contacts, connections. I know we know a lot of the same people or similar people, but make sure you know you can reach out to me anytime, man.
I appreciate that, Scott. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. All right, everybody. That's the show. If you like this episode, please share it. Support Caleb and I. We're both on LinkedIn. You know the other platforms. We put all the stuff here in the show notes where you can connect with everyone. Until the next time, I wish you the best and God bless you. Take care.